20, 30 years from now, what did we do anything? What did we do? Do we just sit quietly? So that's one of the other reasons I use my nursing voice to say this is wrong.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Rosa Donato.
And I'm Marian Leary.
And you're listening to Amplify Nursing, a Penn nursing podcast supported by the Pinola Fund for Innovation in Nursing.
Amplify Nursing features nurses who are leading the way in science, policy, and innovation.
Our guests defy stereotypes, define practice, and disrupt convention.
We highlight the breadth and depth of nursing influence on society by amplifying nurses who are pushing boundaries and breaking down barriers to build a new paradigm. Today on Amplify Nursing, we talk to the relentless school nurse Robin Cogan. While training as an art therapist, Robin realized the power in caring for the whole person. And for the past 19 years, Robin has maintained a dedicated practice as a school nurse. Responsible for overseeing the health of hundreds of children in Camden, New Jersey, Robin passionately advocates for the health and safety of all of her students. As the author of the Relentless School Nurse blog, Robin shares her stories and insights and provides a platform for a global community of school nurses.
Hi, Robin. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Well, I appreciate you asking me. And I have to say, when I was invited on the show, I just really one funny thing. I had no idea. I thought a nurse innovator was someone who had invented something. So I just want to start off by saying that. So I'm really excited to be on the show as a nurse innovator in it maybe a different twist.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I think nursing is a very innovative profession, which is what this podcast is all about. So why don't we start, Robin? Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing and where you got to where you are?
Oh, so that's a loaded question on a couple levels. One is that I have been a nurse since 1985. And I have been a school nurse this is the beginning of my 19th year. We actually started yesterday.
Okay.
So today our kids start back tomorrow. So lots of busyness going on this time of year, but my journey to nursing had some twists and turns that isn't a typical nursing journey. And so when I became a nurse, I actually started my career in a completely different field. I was an art therapist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when I was graduating from my program, part of our practicum experience was spending what was the equivalent of a semester in a inpatient psych setting. And I happened to be at an inpatient psych hospital in South Philly. It was called Einstein Southern. Okay. And on our unit, there was a group of nursing students that came through, and I was a graduating senior in this art therapy psychology program. And on the unit at the time that these students happened to be coming through for their psych rotation, one of their peers was an inpatient in our unit.
Oh, wow.
Now, I know that probably would never be able to happen today, right? But it made me realize that I was missing a lot of information about the whole person. And I had to make a decision at that time whether or not I was going to continue on in art therapy, get a master's in social work. I was really kind of in between, not knowing which way the wind was going to blow. And honestly, I wasn't very intentional about it, which isn't a good idea. But I decided, just because of what was happening at the time in terms of art therapy, basically there were absolutely no jobs, and it wasn't really being recognized as a career that had a strong future at that time. Since then, art therapy has really been embraced as a modality, but this was a long time ago. I decided to go to nursing school. It's not like it was a calling. I mean, I did grow up reading Cherry Ames books, so that's about as close to nursing as I was connected. And so I went from like this really incredibly liberal arts college. I was at the College of New Jersey
Okay.
At the time, it was called Trenton State. And I went to a very cloistered, very conservative nursing school that was part of an associate's degree program. So I was actually even going kind of backwards in my education.
Uh-huh.
And I spent 3 more years in nursing school. So that's how I became a nurse.
So do you use your art therapy background today as a school nurse?
I have to say that I use my psych and art therapy probably more than any other of my skill set. I mean, of course, my nursing assessment skills I use all the time, but my psych and art therapy background really gave me a wonderful foundation to become a school nurse, because at this moment, the last study that was done showed that school nurses spend up to 35% of our time on mental health issues.
Wow.
Yeah. And that doesn't include the staff. That's another whole realm. So
I'm
we're
sure.
busy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that that's definitely a piece that people don't necessarily see.
Yeah.
My aunt is a school nurse as well, and she also talks about how everyone in the school comes to her for different things.
Everybody, it's true. And visitors and families. And I mean, there have been times when I've run across the street and saw like the father of a parent who was bedridden and needed things. I mean, it's amazing what school nurses do. It's really a community health position. It's really a public health. I consider myself more of a public health nurse than even a peds nurse, truly.
Okay. So why don't you, for people who don't know, what is it that school nurses do on a regular basis? What do you want people to know that you do?
I love that question, because I want people to know that school nursing, number one, is not a retirement job. You are an independent practitioner. You are alone in a school. You are most likely the only medical person in the educational setting. Very rarely do school nurses work together, because the funding just isn't there. When I started as a school nurse, I had 900 students, pre-K to 8th grade.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, one person, just me, 900 kids, all of those ages and stages. And I'm also in Camden, New Jersey. So the needs, it's a really under-resourced city.
Yes.
And a complex population. And so, but that's a snapshot of one school nurse. And this story repeats itself over and over again. Now I am a preschool nurse. I have almost 400 kids in 4 different buildings across the city.
Wow.
And I would say a large percentage of my population now many are undocumented, or their immigration status is questionable and very precarious. There's another whole realm of complication and complexity that comes, when you're facing deportation.
Right.
And so like I said, it's not a retirement job. I mean, we work with students who have complex medical needs, who probably in other decades may have been out of district placement in special schools, but are here.
Right.
And so really what I want people to understand is the level of complexity of school nursing and the skill set that's needed. And even within nursing, I have to say, we haven't, let's just say, not yet, but hopefully this is changing. There has been some judgment about what school nurses do, even within nursing.
Right.
So, which is why I was so honored, beyond honored, to be able to speak at the Town Hall for the Future of Nursing 2030 that was held at Penn in July. Beyond honored. That I think it was the first time school nursing was even brought to the table in terms of the future of nursing. So it was one of the absolute highlights. A little terrifying, I must say, but really highlight a great honor. And I was quite thrilled to be able to talk about school nursing to a completely different audience. Each town hall had a different theme, and the theme for our town hall was complex health and social needs, both care and payment of. And so what I did was I gave an overall picture of what school nursing is, how many school nurses, what percentage of schools, for example, even have a school nurse, what the ratios look like, and the complexities of communication with parents. So, they were asking us to kind of predict in the future, what will school nursing look like, in 2030, or what do school nurses need?
Mhm.
So, of course, I talked about school safety. This is a primary concern across the country, and as I said in my talk, and I write about this often, school nurses, thankfully, most schools will never have a school shooting, thank God.
Right.
But every single school at this point are having active shooter drills.
Right.
So even though they're drills, some of them are very hyper realistic, and they're quite traumatizing to the students and the staff. So I talked about school safety. I talked about ratios. I talked about the importance of having a school nurse in every building. I shared that school nursing began with Lillian Wald in the early 1900s, who put the very first school nurse into a New York City school. Her ratio was like one school nurse to, I don't even remember the number now. It was more than 10,000 students, and within a few months, she had impacted attendance by like 90%. She had improved attendance because she was doing home visits and all of these things that we know work, that are coming back, like everything's old is new again kind of thing.
Yeah.
Vintage
nursing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Lillian Wald is the founder of public health nursing. And so Lena Rogers was the first school nurse, and it was, and the population that Lena Rogers served were immigrants. They were new immigrants to the country. They didn't speak English. They were very poor. They were living in substandard conditions. I mean, she was describing, her book describes my population.
Wow.
So I shared that, and I wanted to give a background of who school nurses are, what we do, and why it's so important to have a school nurse available and in every building, especially in the very complex times that we're living in. So it was very well received. I was thrilled I made it through. Let's just say that. It was a little intimidating.
Yeah.
And the feedback was really, really nice. So that made me, it was all worth it. It was quite an endeavor. It was really a process to get from what I really wanted to say to then making it, you had 15 minutes, period, the end, or you would be cut off.
Right.
So anyway, it was quite an interesting experience.
Wow, that's fantastic. You have a habit of being a little bit of an evangelist for school nursing.
Thank
Why
you.
don't you talk to us a little bit about your blog and your Relentless Nurse program?
Thank you. Wow, I've never been called that. I like that. So I always wanted to write a blog. I am a creative mind, and since I stopped my art in art therapy back in 40 years ago, I really didn't have a creative outlet for that energy. And I always wanted to write a blog. And my husband, since the time we met, which was, we were actually in college, so 1981, he always called me relentless, but not in a bad way. He just said, like, I just don't stop until something gets done. He called me relentless. He has called me relentless our whole life together. And I knew whenever I happened to write this blog, I knew I was going to call it The Relentless School Nurse. So it really wasn't that long ago. It was the summer of 2017, so 2 years ago. I went to our National Association of School Nurse conference, and I went to a workshop about blogging. And like all nurses, right, we're very type A, and if you give us an assignment, we'll do 10 of them, right? And so the assignment for this workshop was to write a blog just about the experience of being at the conference and send it in to the person who was running the workshop. So I wrote like 4 blogs that night. I was so excited to get this assignment, and I wrote and the thing I love about blogs is that they're short. And I mean, they're quick, right? Like if people don't really want to read very much, I hate to say it. So if a blog is about 500 words, that's good. People will read about 500 words. That's what I found anyway. So I found this amazing creative outlet, and I just started writing on a weekly basis. And now 2+ years later, I have The Relentless School Nurse, and now it's a website. And what I found is I wanted initially to tell the stories. I didn't want to forget my school nursing stories. And then I realized it's such an interesting platform. People want to hear other people's stories. We learn so much from reading about other people and hearing their experiences. So I started asking colleagues really if they would like to contribute. And, I found that people will say yes if they're asked. Like, it's really nice to ask somebody and then they say yes. So I've met wonderful people actually through Twitter, is how I have made this really fascinating network, now an international network, and of nurses, but also all different professionals and who have contributed to my blog. So it's really been a wonderful way to communicate what school nurses do, to talk about these god-awful issues that are plaguing our country, and to meet like-minded people. I have to say, on Twitter, I do use the block mechanism quite a bit. Sometimes I just have to block people. But I have enjoyed it, and has really opened some doors for me that never would have opened had it not been for social media.
Yeah, it's definitely a fantastic medium to kind of open your eyes to other things if you're willing to look at other things.
Absolutely.
So how about you talk to us a little bit about what are some of the big issues that you see with school nursing today?
Well, right now, since we're all back to school and, these next few weeks, for me, I know, and a lot of my colleagues, school safety is a huge issue. It's a huge concern. We are in the middle of a gun violence epidemic in this country. Mm-hmm. And when I look at states like Texas, who've had 3 mass shootings in just a matter of a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
We are, this is our big concern, school safety and also active shooter drills. I can't tell you enough how traumatizing they can be. And school nurses are talking about how they're impacting their students and their staff. And there really is very little research. There's a huge gap in research about the efficacy, the right direction to go in terms of emergency preparedness. This is a very complicated problem, and it's not just one solution. But unfortunately, in the the times that we're living, parents want to know that schools are taking action.
Right.
And these, honestly, it's a very unregulated field, this whole school safety, burgeoning, kind of field of, I can sell you this lock for your door and I can harden your school. But we don't know if these things are even effective, right?
Right.
And so this is a big issue that school nurses are talking about. Of course, we're also talking about safe staffing and realistic staffing. Is it realistic for one school nurse in Oregon to have 4,000 students?
Wow.
Across miles? Like, what are we doing? What is our value? What does that say about how we value children in this country, right?
Yeah.
So I write a lot about these kinds of issues that not just impact the school nurse, but really impact the community. Certainly, the immigration issue is a huge concern, and it is impacting everyone, especially the children. Talk about trauma.
Yeah.
I write a lot about adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs study, and adverse community environments. The combination of these two things impacting children currently, and then decades from now, you're looking at people's chronic health conditions can be tied to adverse childhood experiences. So there's so much lots of rich material to write about, and I just kind of follow the trends and write my 500 words a week or more, and I seem to be, it's resonating with people. I have a nice readership, and it seems to be growing. So I'm happy about that, because I think in the end, if it does nothing but amplify the voice of school nursing, I've done my job.
Yeah. So about the immigration piece of it, I feel like not only, I feel like we're losing sight of the fact that it's not just people with immigration issues that are being affected by this.
Mhm.
I know my sister-in-law is a teacher at a high school. She had a student she was working really hard with to try and get him into college, and then all of a sudden he just didn't come back to school anymore. And it turns out there were immigration issues, whatever, down the line. And, all of that work and investment, not to mention the emotional connection that you have with a person, and now they're just gone.
And they're gone. And
Um,
that's what happens. People disappear. And
yeah,
it's like this underground work that's happening. And I know in my city, we know when ICE is going to be in Camden. I mean, the word is out there on the street, and people aren't going to work, and kids aren't coming to school, and it is impacting everyone. And you're right, it's impacting the teachers who are working really hard to care for these students and guide them, and working with the families. I mean, we're working against so many odds, and then you're right, families disappear. They
yeah,
move on. It is this invisible network, um, and people are living in fear. They're living in fear of being deported.
yeah,
And I have parents who, you know, when depending on when they arrived and where they arrived. I mean, many of my children have come from El Salvador, through Guatemala, through Mexico, through Texas or Arizona, the same exact path that the people who are now living in cages and not given soap and toothpaste, except they came at a different date on the calendar. But
right.
their immigration status is up in the air, and I have had children kept at school because their parents were detained during the school day. And
Wow.
then if the family, and they don't know, if they don't make arrangements with someone to care for their children who has absolutely no record at all. Number one, they have to not be here illegally, right?
Right.
And they have to have no record, no police record. Um, the children will end up in foster care,
Wow.
and it's just heartbreaking, and it's immoral. I mean, I just can't believe we're living through this right now. And I want to say, I think to myself, like, we're going to say to ourselves 20, 30 years from now, what did we do? Anything? What did we do? Do we just sit quietly? So that's one of the other reasons I use my nursing voice to say, this is wrong. You are traumatizing these children and these families, and we are changing the architecture of their brain, right? Impacting their health for decades to come. I mean, the data is pretty clear on the ACEs study
Yeah.
that adverse childhood experiences can, number one, really impact your long-term health outcomes. That's the least of the problems.
Right.
Mental health, physical health, addiction, propensity for violence. I mean, I feel strongly after doing the research, and it's not my research, that there is a clear connection between childhood adversity, exposure to violence, and either being violent or being a victim of violence. So
Right.
that's the loop to me. All of these things are connected.
Yeah. What can we do, Robin, as nurses that we aren't doing already?
Well, in school nursing anyway, we can be that safe place to land. We can be that. I mean, when you look at the ACEs study, one of the mitigating factors is having that person who really is that strong constant in the child's life. If it can't be someone in the immediate family, it can be any loving adult, right?
Mhm.
Any adult that really cares. And I think as nurses, we have to know what the services are. And it's not just enough to hand somebody a phone number. We have to be a warm handoff. We need to connect families to services. I feel like people say, oh, people don't access the services. There are lots of services out there, but you also have to meet people where they are. And a lot of it is, I think, implicit bias and making judgments about people's skill sets, you know. I have just seen, I know that I people care about their children. I don't care where they're from. We all, you know, the common thread is we care about our children. Not everybody has the wherewithal to show it in maybe ways that everyone thinks is typical. But
Right.
for the most part, parents love their children. They just may be under extreme adversity and extreme stress. So I think as much care coordination as we can provide, knowing our community resources, not turfing things off, seeing things through to the end,
Mhm.
you know, really taking those extra steps, that's what we can do.
Yeah, they're all
It's
great.
hard, right? But
Yeah,
that's the work. That's the work.
yeah, they're all great things. So what are you doing moving forward? Do you have any new projects coming up?
I do have some new projects, actually. I am now on the advisory board of Affirm Research, which is, I want to get this acronym right because I always, I never want to say it wrong. Affirm Research really, it was started by a group of physicians, emergency room docs, and trauma surgeons, and it stands for the American Foundation for Firearm Injury Reduction in Medicine.
Okay.
And you know, I don't know if I'm sure you're aware, but there has been no federal funding for gun violence prevention research since the 90s because of something called the Dickey Amendment.
Yes.
And yeah, so the Dickey Amendment was named for an Arkansas congressman, and he's since passed away, but it was tied to federal dollars being used ostensibly research dollars, but if those research dollars impacted gun sales, it was disallowed. And so it really was very much in the NRA and the gun lobby was very much involved in this Dickey Amendment. And so as a result of the Dickey Amendment, kind of as a general rule, there was very little to no funding released, federal funding for gun violence prevention research. And
Right.
so Affirm is an organization that is creating funding streams so that researchers can do the work that hasn't been done over the 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's a phenomenal organization. And they really are, they're apolitical. They are determined to find solutions to curb this epidemic of gun violence. The funding goes directly to research. And so the point is to implement life-saving programs quickly. So the turnaround's much faster. And so they're looking at creating educational components, really looking at evidence-based solutions and protocols. So it's not a pack. They're not pushing an agenda of a certain, you know, political arm. They're looking at the science. What does the science say?
Right.
What's our path forward? And so right now, there are only 2 nursing organizations that have signed on as partners, believe it or not. I mean, the AMA is involved. Every medical organization you can imagine is on board with them. The APA, I can just go on and on. But the only nursing organizations, the very first one was the Emergency Nurses Association, the ENA. That makes sense, right, as emergency room nurses. And the other organization that signed on, and I am so proud of this, is the National Association of School Nurses.
That's wonderful. So why are organizations not signing on? Is there
Why don't nursing organizations speak up?
Yeah.
Why don't we? Why don't we say to our and I've been yelling on Twitter, where are you?
Yeah.
Why was I the only nurse at the table at their founding meeting? I was the only nurse there. I was sitting in this room of emergency room doctors and trauma surgeons. And I was just like, where are we? We're 4 million of us. There's 4 million nurses and there's 1 million physicians. Why aren't we using our voice?
Yeah.
What are we so afraid of? Is it in our DNA that we don't talk because we don't want to cause waves? Well, that hasn't worked, has it?
Yeah.
So anyway, Maybe I am an evangelist. Maybe you were right.
Well, these are all exciting things. We can't wait to see what happens, what comes out of this project that you have. Can you tell us where we can find you on Twitter, on the internet, all those
Right.
things?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Robin Cogan, RobinCogan. And my blog is relentlessschoolnurse.com. One word.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Robin, for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me. I guess in the end, I was innovative and I didn't even realize it.
Absolutely.
Hello, Marion.
Hey, Angela.
So, we had the pleasure today of speaking with Robin Cogan, the relentless school nurse. And she certainly is relentless. She threw the gauntlet down.
She did. Boy,
Yeah.
I am super impressed with her on a number of levels. First and foremost, just her passion to school nursing and trying to really evangelize what it is that school nurses do. Exactly like she said, it's not a retirement job, and the breadth and depth of the things that they have to deal with on a daily basis is just mind-blowing and so complex. And, you know, I give mad props to all of them who are out there every day taking care of our children out in the community.
Yeah, for sure. And, she posed a really interesting question. What's going to happen 20 or 30 years from now when we look back on our nursing history and we look at all of the things that are going on right now? And the question is, what did we do about it?
Yeah, she said, where are we? Why are we not at the table? And it is a relevant, important question for all of us individually as nurses and as nursing organizations to really think about and take stock, right? Like, the school nurses are out in the communities. They're dealing with mental health. They're dealing with immigration. They're dealing with active shooters.
Yeah.
And they are dealing with it every day. But there are also nurses in the hospital. They're in the communities where these things are going on. And they are dealing with it every day, too. And so why aren't we, as a profession, taking the action, putting our voices towards these issues?
Yeah.
It is a question that I really do believe we need to be thinking about and answering.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I'm hoping that it will eventually show that we show up on the right side of history.
I hope so. And thank goodness Robin is out there leading that charge. I really appreciate the work she is doing to be that voice.
Yeah, for sure. Amplify Nursing is hosted by Dr. Angela Rosa DiDonato and Marion Leary, and produced by the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing, with special thanks to our Department of Information Technology Services for their assistance. Music for the podcast was created by Harper Leary. The podcast is made possible by the Krista and Rich Pinola Fund for Innovation in Nursing.
Follow us on Twitter at Penn Nursing. Until next time, keep pushing over, under, around, and through.